It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantha Tracks TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine. What's gone wrong? Here we go. We're back once again with your weekly recap of everything Star Wars. We're supposed to be on holiday this week, but obviously there's been a lot of breaking news out of Lucasfilm this week. So while Mr. Naylor's on holiday, joining me from Fantha Tracks Radio's Making Tracks, Mr. Mark Newbold and Mr. Mark Mulcaster.
Hello, Brian.
Hello, how are you guys?
Very good.
How are you,
very
Mark?
Well. Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right. How are you, Mark?
I'm very good. I'm good. We contract this week about some of this stuff, but it's always great to hear Brian's perspective because, you know, Absolutely. Brian knows stuff. We just make stuff up.
Yeah. Should we find out what Paul's up to that he's not here?
Oh, yes, please.
I have a little video.
Hello everybody, I'm actually dialing in from Benidorm in Spain. I'm away at the moment on a little short break. Get a bit of winter sun, and it has been quite sunny today to be fair. But I'd just like to wish my dear friends Mark, Brian and potentially Mark all the best for another episode of Good Morning Tatooine. There's a lot to talk about this week and it would be great to be there, but at the end of the day, sangria or sand, what you go for? I hate sand, it gets everywhere. I love sangria, it gets everywhere. Anyway, that's Paul Naylor over and out. Have a great week. Thanks folks.
I'm just happy that it's not a video of him with Sticky Vicky and her ping pong balls. But yeah, that's Paul on holiday once more. But yeah, we've had major news out of Lucasfilm this week, guys. News that we've probably been expecting for some while. And that is Kathleen Kennedy has decided to step down. And Dave Filoni is going to be leading the studio as president and chief creative officer, alongside Lynwen Brennan as co-president, announced on StarWars.com this week. What did you guys think initially when you heard the news? Mr. Newbold, I'll start with you.
Oh, wow, starting with me. I was not surprised. I think there was enough people that sort of floated this sort of trio of characters sort of moving roles around. So it wasn't a huge surprise in that sense. I think the timing was surprising. I know myself and Mark had done an episode of Making Tracks that came out in the middle of last week where we were thinking, you know, D23, will it be before or after Mando and Grogu? We were thinking back end of the year, not anywhere near where we are now. So that was a surprise. Also, the fact that it happened at 11 o'clock at night when I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning for work wasn't the best. So Lucasfilm, please do better.
And Mr. Mulcaster, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the same really. Yeah, I mean, I woke up to the news at kind of 6 a.m. So I was really surprised, but you know, also very excited because obviously, change at the top means, hopefully some announcements coming out, and be interesting to see what they've got coming up for us.
I, funnily enough, had been having a conversation with Mark and Matt Booker just a few hours before the announcement dropped. And I actually said that the announcement would happen on the 2nd of February. I had great confidence because that's the next shareholder meeting.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's when they're going to announce Bob Iger's person that's going to take over from him as CEO.
Yeah.
And they'll announce that. They'll announce the Lucasfilm changes, and they'll all happen at the tail end of the year. But they'll announce it now and announce it as a sort of transition period. And I thought we'll get it in one big announcement because information overload distracts shareholders in some ways. So let's throw lots of news at them and they can't be too upset. And that's kind of my prediction. But there's been something going on in this last week at Disney in that we've had a lot of announcements about new departments being created, new appointees and new roles. And I just wonder if the decision's already been taken as to who's going to replace Bob Iger, and Bob Iger's doing his final shuffle before that announcement. And I have a sneaky suspicion that maybe there's some people at Lucasfilm a little bit upset that they didn't get chosen. And so they may be getting shuffled around within the Disney studio network of companies as well, as some kind of compensation towards them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Why you say that? Do you think that some of these new departments or new positions are to placate people? Because I know you.
That's kind of. You kind of notice that kind of thing happens in big business, and that when someone goes for the role of CEO and they don't get it, in order to keep them happy and to keep them within the company, they give them a new role in a new department. So it doesn't feel like, okay, you're being pushed to the side and given this slightly less important role. By making it a new role, making it a new department, it kind of makes it, this is important and grand and official, and it's a promotion. So it's to keep people happy and keep them in the mix. And the next time CEO comes round, they may be back in position to get the job. And that's kind of where I think there's been a lot of shuffling of the decks this week, and I think it's Bob Iger making his last picks before he's announced his replacement. But I don't think he'll go until the end of the year. I know he's contracted to the end of the year. I think there'll be a 6-month, whatever, transition period. And I don't think Kathleen Kennedy is technically stepping down as president at this exact moment. It reads, and it's not very clear, that that there's going to, well, in the headline on StarWars.com, it literally says Lucasfilm and Walt Disney Studios announced leadership transition, but they don't sort of give a kind of time window or how that's going to work or details on how that's going to work. So I suspect she's taken a step backwards and doing less for the remainder of the year, which is still going to be there probably technically as president until beyond Mando and Grogu anyway.
You'd like to think that there'd be an element of handover, though, wouldn't you? Like, she came in 6 months before George left, so he was there to sort of bed her in that big, the massive change. It was a sale era, but you'd like to think, and not that Filoni and Lynwen Brennan clearly knows the game well anyway because of what she's been doing for Lucasfilm, but Filoni, it's new ground for him. On top of what he's already doing creatively, you'd like to think that there'd be some, some handover there.
Yeah. I'm just going to flick through what was said in the announcement. This is the announcement from StarWars.com. So they announced after 14 years of leading the studio, President Kathleen Kennedy is stepping down from her role. She's going to return to full-time producing, including the studio's upcoming films, The Mandalorian Grogu and Star Wars Starfighter. The big take I take from that initially is the fact that they're saying lead in the studio, because when she took over, there wasn't a Lucasfilm studio at all. And I think that's what she doesn't get credit for actually creating and building, that when she came in to work alongside George initially before she became president, when George stepped aside and sold to Disney, Lucasfilm weren't in a position to make a film or make a TV show at all. They had no working studio within the body of the company.
Yeah, just a production company, I guess, at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah. Effectively, they were a licensee company, really, more than anything, to handle the brand and license the product out. If you told them to make a film, they didn't have the people within the organisation to make one. So she's kind of built up Lucasfilm into a fully working studio from scratch, in effect.
So she's very much not giving over or handing the keys over to the company that she picked up when she started 14 years ago, is she?
No, it's radically different, and not just because of the Disney purchase. The two things they emphasised on Dave Filoni, again, which interested me, was the fact that he worked closely with George Lucas, and they called out probably his two tentpole achievements, as in the animation, the Clone Wars, and bringing to air the first live-action Star Wars TV series and The Mandalorian along with Jon Favreau, which I thought was two interesting things to call out. I don't know what your thought is, Mr. Mulcaster.
Well, I mean, I suppose because they're both things that, on one level they're kind of saying, he's learned under the learning tree of George, as it were. So he's got like one foot in the legacy of Star Wars, but also he's very much focused on driving it forward with obviously Mando and Grogu. But also, like, it's interesting about like both of those things, both of those endeavors are with somebody else. So it's George with Clone Wars, and then it's Favreau with Mandalorian. So it's quite interesting. Just an interesting note there. But yeah, I mean, I suppose on some hand, you think about some of the problems and the heat that Kathleen Kennedy's had from older, generations of Star Wars fans. I guess this is kind of like as a way to kind of like try and give him some reassurances. Like, this is a guy, but basically everybody really have been clamoring for on one level or another. Really since probably The Force Awakens, I think, or definitely since Last Jedi. Rightly or wrongly, that's just how it is. So they've given him the keys to the kingdom. So let's see kind of what he does with it and what's he going to build.
He's in an interesting position in that he's never himself directed a live action feature, and it seemed to be that was the direction that he was heading in. And there's kind of talk this week, and it is just talk, that perhaps his talked about motion pictures not going to happen anymore. I wonder if with season 2 of Ahsoka, that's the last time we ever see him in the director seat, and that he won't step back into that role at all, and he is going to be a creative leader rather than a hands-on director. Mr. Newbold, your thoughts on that?
That's a good question, because I suppose when you look back at what George did, and it's a different era, different time, the company was different, obviously. When George wasn't making films, he was building Skywalker Ranch. Dave doesn't have to build Skywalker Ranch, but he does have to do things that George never had to do, in the sense of all the things that Kathleen has developed. You imagine he and Lynwen Brennan have got to be all over and across that. So directing a film, taking the time out to go and direct a film, directing an episode, I can see him doing that. I can see episodes here and there, and obviously having a hand in the creative side in a sort of Kevin Feige way, but actually having the time to completely step away and go and do a director film. I don't think that the role would not allow for that. That sounds a bit too harsh, but I don't think there's just the capacity to do that. So you might be right. It might be the situation that in that Kathleen Kennedy now leads to. I mean, she's already produced Mando and Grogu. She's already pretty much produced Starfighter. It doesn't say whether or not she's going to produce anything else after that. She does talk about other projects. Every eventuality, she'll do more projects with her husband Frank Marshall. There's lots of. She's got lots of friends in Hollywood, so she's got lots of options. Doesn't necessarily mean those options include Star Wars. I hope they do, because you don't, a producer of that caliber just walk away. But with Filoni, I think that opportunity, if that sort of Avengers type thing they talked about, the Favreau film was the first one, and the Filoni one in a couple of years was the next one. that's not being talked about remotely being talked about, even amongst fans. It's not being talked about for. I know we've not talked about that on Making Tracks for ages, so it does feel like that's kind of gone by the wayside.
Yeah. Big Kev making the comment that Filoni's waited half his lifetime for this assignment. He's done nothing but train for it, in my opinion, successfully. Mr. Mulcaster, my question to you in that is, he was the apprentice to George. Technically, now he's the master.
Yeah.
And he has had great success in what he's created. And do you feel that he's the right pick to be, and he has been in this role of head of creative, but to be at the forefront of the company in this role?
I mean, I think, do you know what? It's really difficult, isn't it? Because, like you said, even with Lynwen there, his role is massive. And you do need somebody who, I mean, gets the franchise, gets kind of, appreciates the franchise. Obviously, he's, loves the franchise. But I think we need to also, be sure that he's going to kind of push the franchise forward, so we don't suddenly just kind of revert back to just like lessons from George without actually maybe taking some big swings, because I think that's one of the things that I think Kathleen Kennedy again kind of people forget is that she's kind of tried to innovate and put out different types of Star Wars content, which I don't necessarily know you would consider a safe option, really. I mean, let's go back even 5 or 6 years, even before Force Awakens. If somebody said we're going to do, a Rogue One kind of style film, and then we're going to do this real kind of like premium content, adult focused, mature series for TV, whether or not people would still actually, would be kind of like on board with that, or would be a little bit nervous by that, and then we get Andor and look where we are. It's, fantastic.
Part of the announcement, obviously, as you mentioned, Lynwen Brennan is going to be co-president. She's been president of Lucasfilm Business under Kathleen Kennedy, essentially Kathleen Kennedy's right-hand woman. And there was rumours in the second half of last year that Carrie Beck would be president alongside Dave Filoni. And at that time, I said, no, it'll be Lynwen Brennan. So hats off to me. Should have put money on it. But it does strike the right balance between creative and business. And I think harshly judged, I think often as Kathleen Kennedy was on the creative side of things, she was having to run both sides of things. And that's kind of the producer hat, run the whole business and oversee the creative. And it's always been my comment in the past when people said, oh, Dave Filoni should be president, was, do you want Dave Filoni spending his day in HR meetings and discussions about insurance and those kind of conversations, or do you want him to be creating films and TV shows?
Exactly.
And so I think they've got the right balance by bringing these two people together, and it follows the same pattern that Disney have across a lot of their businesses, where they have two people at the top, one on the creative side, one on the business side. Mark, your thoughts as well, and a Welsh lady as well at the top of Lucasfilm.
It makes sense because that's where the Falcon was built in Wales, wasn't it? So there's a nice connection there. I like the thought that you've got somebody that's on top of the business side. It's a bit like how we do Fantha. You're the technical side of things. You're the organised guy. It works in a sense. You need somebody to oversee these aspects of a business, and with Filoni being the guy that can focus on projects, focus on new ideas, innovate, and continue storylines that are already set and in motion. Because I'm sure we'll get to it in a minute. There's plenty on the table that will move forward, and you'd like to think it won't be the classic Hollywood thing where the new guy comes in and just wipes the whole thing, to get rid of everything. Hopefully it's not that scenario, because we've already got 2 films pretty much there and set, and now moving forward, Filoni comes in, he's got his own ongoing stuff, especially with the Ahsoka and the Mandoverse. the Andor stories seems to be finished, but now we're looking at Rey, now we're looking at Dawn of the Jedi, and there's other things, the Lando stuff. So it's stories from all sorts of elements of the saga. That's for Filoni to focus on. So, like you say, I think having Lynwen Brennan involved and keeping the purse strings. She's an ex-ILMer as well, so you kind of think she's going to want to get behind the innovation that will create technology that will make production cheaper, which means you get either more efficient productions, your cost levels go down, so your profits go up, and all the shareholder, stockholder things that will keep your regular Disney heads happy. She can make that happen, and then Filoni can pretty much be free to just focus on the story. So, to your point, I think it's a good marriage between the two, and I don't think Filoni could have done it on his own. Let's put it that way. I think it's too big a job for one person. Kathleen Kennedy comes in with decades of experience of producing Spielberg movies, most of which were monster hits. So coming into Lucasfilm, where Lucasfilm was back in 2012, again, I don't think you would expect one person to walk into that in 2026.
The fact that she's built or come up through the ranks at ILM to lead ILM, I think is also another huge positive, because perhaps my biggest criticism of the sequel trilogy, more than anything, I had issues with the plot, but it was the fact that it didn't necessarily push new technology in the way that every Star Wars project before it had in some way pushed new technology. And
there's been way more innovation since the trilogy than during or before the trilogy.
Yeah, and I think we kind of saw that in the TV series with Jon Favreau coming in and working alongside Dave Filoni on that. Saw innovation coming there. So I'm hoping Lucasfilm go back to that kind of model where innovation is part of the storytelling as well. I do think that she deserves a better title than co-president. And the last line in the StarWars.com article about her, where it reminds us that she's got a CBE, Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. I think they should change her job title to Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the Empire. Just take the British out.
Do it.
I think that would be great. That would be a great job title.
We need to make her another honorary Fantha tracker. That's what it is. That's the best. That's the best title of all.
Yeah, that's true. They also spoke greatly about Kathleen Kennedy in her run as president, as well. Boy Iger, very complimentary about the work that she's done. Deeply grateful for her leadership, her vision, her stewardship of such an iconic studio and brand. And Alan Bergman as well. She steered Star Wars to incredible box office heights and brought a new generation of fans into the fold. We appreciate having her on board to produce our next couple of films in the studio. Remains in extraordinarily capable hands with Dave Filoni, who's a brilliant storyteller, and Lynwen Brennan, an avid innovator and business leader. I think interesting comments as well from both of them, both in terms of praise for Kathleen Kennedy and how they view the appointment of Dave Filoni and Lynwen Brennan as well. Obviously, it needed their approval. But as Kathleen Kennedy spoke about this week, that she suggested their names 2 years ago, so it's long been in their thoughts that these were the right people to bring Lucasfilm forward.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, I was saying to Mark on Making Tracks, or it might have been afterwards, but basically, on some level, you know, when George introduced Kathy, to take over, there did feel like this was kind of a transitional kind of like role, as well. But yes, she was going to take Lucasfilm into and help it integrate into Disney. But also, it's almost like she was there to hand the baton over to, basically Dave and Lynwen when those people, were ready. Really, I kind of always got that kind of vibe about she was there to kind of like ensure that there was going to be a future for Lucasfilm for somebody else to take over.
Yeah,
that's a good point. And it's not like she's at the end of her career and this is the underline and the final note. Reading what she says, she's ready to move on to new projects. She's ready to go on to other stuff. So I don't think the analogy me and Mark made on Making Tracks was the Alex Ferguson thing at United. How Fergie's still sitting in the stands at matches today, you know, and the ghost of Fergie will never leave until he's gone, and even then it probably won't. So it's a terrible analogy, but you know what I'm getting at, you know, with Lucas, if Lucas hadn't just drawn a line under it and gone to, you know, off and done other things and now the museum and such, he could have lingered as a presence and it would have been disruptive. I don't think you'll get that with Kathleen Kennedy. What Brian just said, you know, that if this was identified 2 years ago as the people that they think should come on board and take over, then Filoni's had 2 years to get his head around it and get in position, and so has Lynwen Brennan. So that succession plan that Kathleen mentioned a while back clearly is, I mean, proof's in the pudding. We've not seen anything from them yet. They've not actually took over yet. But, you know, when we do, we can look back and go, well, thank you, Kathleen Kennedy. You didn't just go, cheers, guys, I'm off. There was a proper handover, a proper process. So, again, something that she won't be appreciated for at all, because I don't think she gets appreciated for much that she does. But I think in the long run for Lucasfilm as a company, that's probably going to be one of the best things she does.
More than 70 films, 25 Academy Awards, 120 nominations, billions at the box office. She doesn't need to prove herself to anyone, I don't think, does she?
No. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she just goes and produces those films that George was threatening to make when he retired, you know, that nobody was ever going to see. So she could produce them, and George could go and make them. You know?
Yeah. My one thought, and it is my one concern, I think, about the timing of this announcement and the decision itself, is you've got The Mandalorian and Grogu coming out in May. We assume Ahsoka Season 2 is going to come out this year, although Disney Plus haven't really confirmed that as yet. I don't think The Mandalorian and Grogu is going to do particularly well at the box office, because there just doesn't seem to be a buzz around it. I could be wrong. I'm wrong many times. And Ahsoka Season 2, I don't think is going to light a fire under anyone either, other than the people who are deeply into the lore of those characters. It'll do fine, but not spectacular. So your first year in the role, you're going to get a lot of criticism, I think. Second year in the job, there's no TV show coming through. There's one movie that you probably haven't been overly involved with. So you're into 2028 before really your fingerprints on anything is going to be seen. That's a long time to have question marks hanging over your head, I think.
But isn't that a bit like when Kathleen took over in 2012 and we didn't get anything till Rebels in 2014? I know you made a great point of how she built the studio so it wasn't in a position to make anything until then, and it was all about the run-up to the trilogy. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, Filoni, it's ongoing business for Filoni with Ahsoka, and kind of the same with Mando and Grogu, because I think we all kind of feel, even if it probably literally is, it kind of feels like, well, this is what we're getting instead of season 4 of Mando. And they've announced nothing now, live action, as you say. We've got more Shadow Lord, which you kind of think Filoni's going to have her fingers in because of the thematic elements that sort of play off the back of the Clone Wars. So there's sort of, it's more, there's nothing new in that sense. Starfighter, Kathleen was talking to Sean Levy 10 years ago, I think. So that's been a real long gestating thing. So, yeah, you're right. It would probably will be at least 2028 until we get something that's completely fresh and original. My big question and query is, where will that be set? Will that be a Mandoverse thing where we look at something completely fresh and new? You know, but we're past the 50th then, so it could feel all very different by then.
That's very true. She did an interview with Deadline, which they called the exit interview, which I don't know if it really was, because I get the feeling from the interview, and it could just be me, but me reading it, I didn't think it was a great interview. And so I think the news was kind of dropped on them at the moment. And, you know, they arranged to do an interview with Deadline on the last day of the Starfighter production, and have just dropped the news on them and told them, you're going to have to sit on this until we tell you to release it. That's my impression. So I don't think this is really an exit interview. I think it was just a right people in the right place at the right time kind of interview. And as I say, it was on the last day of Starfighter. and she announced basically to them that, or she explained to them that 2 years ago she went to Bob and Alan at Disney to figure out what the transition plan was going to be. She recommended Dave Filoni and Lynwen Brennan. And things kind of moved slowly from them. The rumours obviously been in the air since probably more than 2 years. People have been talking about if, when. And obviously Bob Iger returned, and he returned like the Emperor. And somehow. And she's made it clear that she's no intention of coming back, that she's going to be delighted to be around for the Mandalorian Grogu and Starfighter, which she was a producer on. And if she's wanted on anything else that she's already been involved in, she'd be delighted to be involved in that too. But as you alluded to, Mark, that she indicated that she's interested in working in new technologies, including AI. And you suggested that she might do that alongside George Lucas. Your thoughts on AI-produced content? We were kind of speaking about this before the start of the show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to let Newbold enjoy this one. As an industry professional...
Hey!
There you go. So yeah, as somebody who works in TV post and broadcast, you know, it's unescapable the effect that AI is actually having, and I think, I mean, we could do with actually somebody doing something bold with it. Almost, I think, like before we went on air, Ryan said, like, almost kind of defining the parameters. So basically, almost somebody like George or Spielberg with Kathleen Kennedy, maybe producing a full AI generated film, just to kind of, like, you know, with everything, just to kind of go, right, this is what it is, or this is what it could mean, you know. And then, you know, for me and the way that most people experience AI, besides, you know, kind of like image editing on your phone and stuff like that, it's more production tools. It's more actual helping people work more efficiently, rather than necessarily kind of like taking jobs away. So you know, so I think it's interesting that she said that, you know, but also actually Lucasfilm in themselves, you know, they are, you know, they've always been at the forefront of technology since, you know, it was created. So similarly, you'd kind of always see that this is something that maybe Dave and Lynwen are going to start looking into as well, and developing to see what it could mean for the franchise as a whole. So it's interesting.
I kind of
view...
Sorry, on you go, Mark.
No, sorry, mate. Just something that Mark said there. I just think the difference with Lucasfilm this time and ILM is that ILM in the past have innovated and largely led the technology, whereas this time it's taking an existing technology. Not that Lucasfilm created CG by any measure, but they made massive leaps with that technology. And other elements that they've done before. This is a thing that's out there that kids on their phone can do. It's a technology that's rampant right now. I just wonder, you know, George and Spielberg are probably a bit long in the tooth, and not to say Kathleen Kennedy's a bit long in the tooth, but, you know, I think you'd probably be looking at younger filmmakers to want to lead that charge. But certainly that can be done within the realms of ILM if they want to go down that route, or however they want to play it. But it's like you say, Brian, the parameters, that's where the hard work needs to be put in.
I view it, AIs, people are seeing AIs as the end result at the moment, where, as Mark said, it should be viewed more as a tool. And it's the same way as I've seen the movement from stop motion to CGI. And people would criticize that. But to actually get good CGI, you need a good artist behind it. And we're going to find the same with AI. To get good AI-generated content, you're going to need good creatives behind it.
Yeah.
And it's just like CGI, people will go too far with it and do too much with it. And people will do the same AI. They'll go too far with it and do too much with it. And it's finding the right balance between art, between stop motion, between CGI, between AI, and you're probably going to end up, the final solution is going to be combinations of all.
Absolutely.
And I've been doing a lot of work with AI in terms of data and coding and shortening the process and of various things using AI. And it's become really interesting as to what it's good at, what it's bad at, and the various tools. And working with a combination of AI tools is often the best solution. And you start developing your own pattern of what works best, what's the right combination. And I can see Spielberg, Lucas, Kennedy being almost like the spiritual guides to young filmmakers, building the parameters, building what's acceptable around the use of a technology like AI.
An ethic, you mean?
Almost like an ethics, yeah.
Yeah.
So it remains a creative filmmaking process, and AI is just one of a number of tools. It's like little things like I keep thinking of AI in relation to there's a scene with Han Solo where he rounds the corner with his gun in A New Hope, and there's loads of stormtroopers where there never used to be. So done with CGI, you could also do the same with AI to fill in the background. So you could film it on stage with a few stormtroopers and then fill in the background using AI, doing the job of CGI, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that. But the decision still remains, what's better, the first version of that scene where he rounds the corners and a few stormtroopers, or the current George Lucas approved version where he rounds the corners and there's loads and loads of them. You still have to make that creative judgment choice, even though the tool's there to be used. So it's interesting. I think she would do very well in this area and building those kind of parameters. So it's something that really interests me from our interview. They talked a lot about our past work on things like Jurassic Park, but then they moved on to having just wrapped Star Wars Starfighter. And she spoke very much favourably about Sean Levy, about the young actor, Flynn Gray. Made an interesting comment about the way that they went about filming it, and that every few weeks they had a new actor coming in, which we kind of knew a little bit about because we knew Matt Smith joined late in the process, for example, and he spoke quite openly about that in interviews. So in this interview, we got a little bit of insight as to where Starfighter is at. We're still, 18 months away, roughly, from it coming out. Are you excited for that film?
I'll take that one. Yes, I am. Mark, are you excited for that film?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why not? Should be fun.
How do you think it should be marketed? And I'm going to say that's because Disney also introduced a new marketing department overseeing all their brands this week, as well as the changes in the Lucasfilm announcements. So it's pertinent because I think the marketing for The Mandalorian and Grogu has been awful and reminds me horribly of the way that Solo was handled, which we'll get to in a minute. Do we need to do better with Starfighter?
Yes, we do. We need to the ultimate template for any Star Wars marketing, and you can't do it with every film, but you should do it with certain films like trilogy starters or standalone. Is what they did with Phantom Menace when they got a Monster Pepsi deal or something that's high visibility wise. It's in your eye line on the shelves. It's something that you see all the time. They did that Coke promotion last year, which is very cool. But you couldn't find it in half the places that you wanted to. It certainly wasn't over here because we had a league promotional thing, didn't we? So we didn't get it here. But you think back to that Pepsi one where it's, in the States it was Frito-Lay and KFC and all the other stuff. And here it was Walker's Crisps and we all know what it was. But it was everywhere. It was everywhere you looked, there it was. So I think something like Starfighter, which 50th anniversary, it's 3 days it comes out after the 50th anniversary date. everyone will be thinking about Star Wars because 2 or 3 months before you'll have had the re-release of the original, and you'll have had Celebration, and you'll have had May the 4th. So Star Wars is in everyone's line of sight. Even with all that free promotion, if you think of it in that way, still think they need a proper big hook so that the casuals, because me and Mark say this all the time, they've got us. If we're the 1% of cinema goers that are also nutty Star Wars fans that'll sit here at 20 to 10 on a Sunday night talking Star Wars, then they've got us. We're going anyway, but it's the other 99% you've got to grab, and they're the ones that you need them in your line of sight when they're putting 40 quid in the tank and they go and buy a Mars bar. And what's this? Oh, why's Ryan Gosling on my Mars bar? Oh, there's a new Star Wars film coming out. Oh, okay. That's what they need to do. So,
but that's probably it, isn't it? That's it probably is the Ryan Gosling effect. We will probably by the end of like next year be sick and tired of seeing his face on Mars bars and crisp packets and stuff. Probably because we'll walk into our collection rooms and we're going to have a whole freaking drawer full of crisp packets and Coke cans with Ryan Gosling's face on it. But I mean, I suppose it's also a thing about timing, isn't it? It's like how far out do you start promoting it? Because it's like I saw some stuff with Grogu on it, like some big on the way into work. I actually drive past the factory which makes the Wellman like vitamin line, and they've got Grogu on that. But obviously he's been, I think, marketed on that for a couple of years. But like, there's no like sign of it's kind of like even a little kind of tagline to kind of say, coming in May, Mando and Grogu and that. And you'd kind of thought by now, like, with the end of the first month of the year, we'd start seeing more than just like, a little bit of content on YouTube, like trailers and stuff. I mean, they did have stuff on at the IMAX. To be fair, when I went to see Avatar in 3D, they had the trailer in 3D, but then you get the IMAX countdown. That was all Mando Grogu themed. The whole thing was themed, which if I'd known, I would have filmed, but I didn't. But and so they seem to be pushing this like premium and kind of like cinema experience for this film, which is quite cool.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned the merchandise along with the advertising, because I'm working on a series of articles about Star Wars finances. I've been talking about for about a month with Mark, but I am working on them. And one of the things people talk about is how much gets spent on a movie in marketing, and ironically, very little for Star Wars. Because if you think about before most Star Wars films are announced, they announce their 5 media partners or 5 or 6 media partners, whether that's Pepsi, whether it's whatever car company, whatever toy company, whatever. They end up doing the marketing for them. So one, they're getting paid by these companies to be allowed to be to do marketing associated with the film, and 2, they end up getting the free promotion from it. So there's like this double-edged kind of sword. Paul McHugh makes a great point here, is that Doomsday's getting their full attention. Everything else seems to be falling by the wayside. And I do wonder if that's why they're now bringing in this new department that's going to oversee marketing for all brands, to avoid that kind of situation where one like brand dominates overall. Yeah.
That's a great point that Paul makes.
There needs to be complementary behaviour when it comes to PR across all the brands.
But we had this. You mentioned Solo, and I'm going to get to Solo in a bit. But Solo got lost in that May 2018 mix when you'd got Infinity War and Deadpool 2 and Ready Player One and all the other stuff that was out there. There's a Pixar film out as well, so it got lost in that mix, and it didn't get marketed right because they didn't want to put it out in December against Mary Poppins 2, which also didn't do well. Shame, because it was a good film, but they got all of these elements wrong. That's where that film went wrong. So you'd think they would have really learned from that, because that was a cluster of a situation for a film that deserved so much better. But yeah, you're right. I think just Avengers. So we saw Avatar at the weekend. Absolutely loved it. It's my favourite one of the 3, to be honest, and really enjoyed it. And we had the Wakanda and Thing, the Fantastic Four trailer with ours. And it's simple and it's straightforward. It's like 10 seconds of a scene, and it doesn't give anything away. But it gives you that countdown and it puts it in your head. We've seen so little from Mando and Grogu, and it's only, 16 weeks away or something like that, maybe, give or take?
Is this actually the Filoni Favreau effect? Because they seem to be, like so controlling and tight-lipped around the rest of that kind of like that era. You know, are they trying to? I don't know. You know, I don't know why they would, because surely they want it to do well. But
of course, you had the whole publishing, the Mando publishing thing, kind of got completely cancelled.
Absolutely,
yeah, that was a big one. I actually think it's going to do better internationally than it will domestically. Because I think Grogu's got this weird appeal in the Asian market. When we were out in Japan, it was ridiculous amount of Grogu stuff. It was like insane. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. She made the interesting point that Starfighter is going to be a one-off. It could be more, but they're working on it being a one-off, which was interesting. Comment. They asked her about the highs and lows of running Star Wars. You can kind of expect where the kind of comments that's going to bring. Basically, she loved working with the people developing the stories and so on. And the laws is always going to be the behaviour of people online. You know, there's the whole YouTube hate, people who will make the comment that she was just a production assistant and she fetched the coffee to Spielberg. Ignorant. So why comment on it? I just move on. She did make the comment, I'm just trying to find it, I don't think it's there, about it was, I'm just trying to find it, I've lost it now, about Ryan Johnson and how he was kind of spooked out, as she described it, and he's kind of pushed back about that on his Twitter X account, saying he wasn't spooked out. Do you just feel it was a case of he knew there was a lot of negative reaction, he got a very good deal from Netflix, why would you not go to the positive potential, and it's turned out to be very successful and lucrative for him, and why thus don't just remain there? Rather than necessarily spooked out, it's just a case of this is a more relaxed, easier path for me to take.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, he did, because he did do that kind of like he did spend a lot of, when Last Jedi came out, he did spend a lot of time online, kind of clarifying and kind of like answering back. I don't know if that's what she was maybe alluding to a little bit, like not necessarily spooked and like a horse, but like he definitely was very kind of vocal and maybe kind of pushed back a little bit harder than I think we've ever seen any kind of creative from like Lucasfilm or Star Wars kind of do in the past.
Which is unusual. When Lucasfilm, I would imagine Lucasfilm staff are pretty much briefed not to do that. That's why you rarely see Pablo Hidalgo on socials, for example.
Don't poke with that.
Who exactly, who after these people probably gets the most flack. But I think also to what Brian just said, all the negativity online, the monetization of the hate of it all. Haters gonna hate has never been a more true phrase than it is right now, and certainly not online. And we're seeing that with, for example, Starfleet Academy, which has just launched. Great first 2 episodes, great fun, very little to complain about. People are absolutely slating it just because, and they can't stand behind their arguments. They just throw out the woke word and nonsense like that. So, Star Wars, we said this the other day on Making Tracks, she must have remarkably thick skin, because the crap she's had to take over the years is intense. And she probably looks at Ryan Johnson from the outside as the guy who probably got the next biggest amount of crap from people, and feels it more for him than she does for herself. So I think you can forgive her for that comment, and I think Johnson took it in the right sense. I don't think it was a big bad.
I think when people have options, it's easier to say no, and I think Ryan Johnson had options, and he's done very well. So why would you go back to the series that gave you so much negativity in your life?
And George said exactly the same thing. George said, why am I going to bother writing anything that everybody's going to basically complain about? You know, and you could just imagine if Ryan, as soon as that trilogy gets announced, that it's like greenlit and it's going ahead and stuff like that, he's just got like an upward hill slog, hasn't he? Like online constantly. There won't be anybody who will be kind of positive, other than Fantha Tracks, of course, positively kind of saying, yeah, this is great, we're going to look forward to this. Everybody will be, on his case. So,
But you think we've just alluded to it, you could argue we've had the saddest moment we'll ever have in the Star Wars story until the end of time, when George Lucas says, they hate everything I do, so I might as well sell it because they're going to dump on whatever I make. And that's the guy that created it, who felt so disenfranchised by his own fans that he sold the company. So everything's good going forward because it's never getting worse than that.
Yeah, it's
on a positive,
but it's also a self-fulfilling prophecy as well, isn't it? Really, in some cases. Sorry,
on a positive for George, he's now saw that it wasn't just him. She threw out some names: David Fincher, Alex Garland. She mentioned Vince Gilligan for TV, who's just done The Amazing Pluribus for Apple. Not all of them would have said yes, because maybe Star Wars doesn't interest them. If you're Vince Gilligan and you've just come off Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, you could walk into any studio and they would make what you want. And he's gone, and Apple have given him free license, 2 seasons for Pluribus to find its audience, and no notes, effectively. Make what you want to make. So why would you come and do Star Wars with very tight parameters when you can make whatever TV show you want? Ironically, I believe there actually is some Vince Gilligan Star Wars scripts out there, because I believe he was one of the writers brought in by George Lucas.
Underworld.
Yeah. So, go hunting, Dave Filoni. there's some in the cupboard.
But this does actually raise an interesting question on some levels. Is that actually one of the things I think that Kathy was good at was, because she's had this 50-year kind of industry experience and she's worked with just about everybody. I think her name carries a lot of clout. Now, Dave Filoni's name kind of carries a lot of clout, but probably not quite so much. So, how is that going to work with Lucasfilm? How much more of an uphill battle are we going to have to maybe start to attract some of these other creators and directors to kind of come and start working in the Star Wars galaxy?
And that's a great point, because she mentioned that about Tony Gilroy, and that when she spoke to him about Star Wars, he was like, I'm not interested in doing Star Wars, until she was able to get him in the door and let's just have a conversation, let's just talk this through. And he was able to find an area within Star Wars that actually interested him. He could tell a story he wanted. And the fact that Star Wars almost becomes slightly irrelevant.
That's true. It's a sandbox, isn't it? Star Wars is a sandbox. You can, if you want, you can spin and tell pretty much any story you wanted to in there. Just to Mark's point, I just wonder what Filoni's MO will be on that. Whether he'll want the big names, like we've got Gosling and we've had some big names over recent times, and Kathleen has overseen an era where you've got Ewan McGregor back, you've got Hayden Christensen back, you've brought back fan favourites, which is important as well. I just wonder whether Filoni will be more in the vein of Lucas, or want to find a bit like Boyega and Daisy Ridley, new faces, fresh faces. We kind of knew who Ewan was on Force Awakens because we'd seen him in a couple of films, but he wasn't a major star. So, whether his MO will be more in that vein, which would be easier to attract, because there was a period where, when the whole Gina Carano thing went down and everyone was talking about, I forget the actress's name, they played Xena, and she was like, no, thank you, because the negativity around Star Wars was so bad, Lucy Lawless, it was so bad. So you think, is that kind of thing still bubbling along with Star Wars? It feels like that simmered down, thank goodness. But another question, it'll be interesting to see how Filoni plays it.
Or maybe even some of those other directors on like Mandalorian and that, Bryce Dallas Howard and people like that. Maybe that's where,
film.
Yeah, well, exactly. Maybe this is a point when actually they also get elevated and they start get given other projects.
Yeah, it's. I think if he follows the model of George Lucas, which it feels like if anyone's going to follow the model of George Lucas, it would be Dave Filoni, that he would quite like to apprentice an apprentice, in effect, in the same that he was George's apprentice. So if he can take someone in who maybe hasn't done much in the way of live action and bring them through to the point that he feels comfortable giving them a directorship role, that might interest them.
That's a great point.
She was asked about the current state of Star Wars films and series, and and she mentions Jim Mangold and Bo Wilmans wrote an incredible script. It's definitely breaking the mold, and it's on hold. Taika Waititi has turned in a script. She thinks it's hilarious and great. It's not my decision because she's got one foot out the door. Donald Glover has turned in a script. She didn't pass any comment on that. Steve Sonnenberg and Adam Driver turned in a script written by Scott Burns. It was great. Anything's a possibility if someone's willing to take a risk. Slight dig. Especially because the next sentence is, I remember when I came into the job, the first thing Bob Iger said to me was, be bold. Don't know if that's intentional, but I kind of read between the lines there, and I think she's thrown it out there to keep it alive because she doesn't want Lucasfilm to give up on it. And obviously Bob Iger's one foot out the door as well, and if he's the main blocker on it, why not keep it alive? Because maybe the next CEO of Disney will be bolder. Who knows?
That's a good point.
Were you surprised by the current state of any of those films, Mark Newbold?
Go, Mr. M.
Well, I mean, I think the Lando one, I think that was probably the most surprising because
I thought that was gone. Really?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those weird things, isn't it? Like sometimes I think we forget how long some of these projects actually just take to gestate. With if you've got just one writer who's kind of like writing it and stuff, depending.
And he's
on
probably the busiest actor involved there, isn't he, Donald Glover? Totally. He's probably the busiest guy there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's I think probably the most interesting one. So.
Yeah.
She makes the final comment in relation to all the ones I've already mentioned, which is that all those filmmakers are walking in not trying to do the same old. She's excited by that, but the studio is nervous about that, and that's kind of where they sit at the moment. So that gives an impression, even though she didn't mention Donald Glover's one, it kind of feels that's in a holding pattern as well. So all the ones she's mentioned at that point, not happening, doesn't look like, as things sit.
Yeah. It just feels, doesn't it, that comment that, I know it's a separate topic, but, they're turning Anaheim Disneyland into an original trilogy Star Wars park for the most part. And that's very much a move back to the old as we head towards the 50th. And you do wonder whether there's certain people who think, let's just make more Stormtroopers, Darth Vader's, Chewbacca's, R2-D2s, and because we know they sell, rather than let's create a new droid like a BB-8 or a new character like a Rey and push forward with the storyline in this monster sandbox that is multi-generational, which is what they should be doing. So that's like you say, Brian, that's an interesting comment that she makes because that's how I read it anyway.
Yeah. In terms of Senkenberg, mentioned that he's turned in a treatment back in August. I think it ran at 70 pages, I read somewhere. Yeah, it does say 70 pages right there. Back in August, weren't entirely happy with it. They've pretty much upended it, and he's working on a treatment which he finished a month ago. And he's going to give them something in March. In terms of anything else she was asked about, she explicitly then says that Mangold's is really on the back burner, as in Soderbergh's. I think the ones by Taika and Donald are still somewhat alive. It's not a very positive comment. It's up to the new team to figure out. I know that Dave and Lynwen are very much on board with what Simon's doing, and that would be a new trilogy. In the timeline of things, that takes you well into 2030 plus. So that's really what's up next. To me, when I read that, that then makes the new trilogy your 28, 29, 2030 film.
Feels like it. And I wonder, because there's no mention of the Rey film, is that the Rey trilogy?
Yeah.
Or was that still on the back burner?
I just wonder whether they're the same thing. The Kinberg trilogy is the Rey trilogy. That's the only thing I can think of. And also, Soderbergh thing's on the back burner. I thought that was turned away. So maybe there's hope for Ben Solo yet.
I get the impression there's a little bit of flex and perhaps a power here, and that it's been rejected by Disney. Technically, it's dead, she thinks it's so good it shouldn't be dead, and she recognises, okay, so Iger's going. Bergman, if he doesn't get the CEO job, will probably retire. New people in at Disney, all these dead projects that they actually love, because that was always a story that Lucasfilm loved this, can come back into play again. And I think that's kind of why she's making that kind of comment, that keeping it in the conversation is kind of what I'm thinking. Big Kev suggests that I would like a new droid character.
Hello, Kev. Good to see you in there tonight.
Yeah. Paul's asking a question about the Daisy Ridley film. Is she leaving that for a Filoni mic drop? Thoughts of why not? I get the impression that the Soderbergh one could have been tied in with it.
That's what I thought.
So if one doesn't happen, does that negate the other one? So I think it hasn't been mentioned because they don't really know what it's going to be now, the Ridley film. I think they're probably back to square one again. And it's been so problematic. I think they're at the point where let's just not speak about it and let's see if we can make it happen. Will Simon Kinberg's one be refocused? If it's going to be 9, it's going to be 10, 11, 12, then it has to at least touch on what's happened to Rey and the Jedi, effectively, if she's supposed to be rebuilding it. So I can't see that trilogy without her appearing in it, even if she's not a main character. So,
unless, of course, it's a massive timeline jump.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. We were asked earlier, and I'm just trying to see if I can find it. Anakin Crespin asked if we thought the Simon Kinberg trilogy would be set in the Old Republic. I don't. I think it's going to be a sequel. It just feels like it's going to be a sequel. She was asked if she would be producing any of them, and she kind of indicated that she'd be happy to. And then she was asked about some more personal questions about her life. And so on. She mentioned that she met with George Lucas, had dinner with him a few weeks ago when he was over in London, which is kind of nice because she probably told him about the transition. Maybe that's when he found out. And I think he'd be kind of chuffed that Dave Filoni's taking it on. Without knowing the people, we always like to talk about them as if we know these people. But
I know we say this on Making Tracks all the time, like we know these people.
Exactly.
You're right. Yeah, you've got to think that if I don't know. I mean, Lucas is sort of on the board at Disney, isn't he? He's a major shareholder. His opinion still carries tremendous weight. You've got to think at some juncture, someone sat down with George and says, "Do you think Dave's the right guy for this?" Not is he up for this? That's not the right phrase, but do you think he's the right guy for this? Do you think he's got the creative vision? Is he boxed into his own story stuff, or can he spread the net broad across the saga? And just from a personal weight of responsibility point of view, the eyes that are on Filoni now will be minuscule compared to the eyes that will be on him when he actually takes over and he first walks out on stage at either D23 or, for us, probably in LA next year. You feel like unless he really poops the bed, the root's going to come off that place, isn't it, when he walked out? Because he's our guy. It feels like Filoni's one of us. He's been there. We've been with him from the beginning as the Clone Wars came out, the show that gave us something after Revenge of the Sith, which was supposed to be the end of everything, and he kept us going and teased us up for the next era, if you like, because the interest in Clone Wars was so big. So,
I do like to think I gave him his most crushing moment.
You did.
When we were at Rancho Obi-Wan. And I don't know what happened, but everybody seemed to leave, and I was just left standing with Dave Filoni chatting outside next to the chickens, as you do. He made a comment like what I thought of the latest season. I can't remember what it was. It must have been early days. It must have been season 2 or 3. Having just been talking about how big a Star Wars fan I was, and I'd come all the way to California just for this event, And I said, yeah, I don't watch it. Don't watch it. Don't watch anything animated. It's not my cup of tea. And just a crushing statement, really. And it wasn't intended to be. Then we talked about ice hockey, and he was happy as Larry. So...
I think you're going to be his protege, Brian. I think you're the next guy.
I just like to think that's why he got into live action. I was the inspiration. If it hadn't been for me, he wouldn't have gone into live action and he wouldn't be now president. So I'll take the credit.
You should.
The most interesting comments out of the interview for me actually centered around Indiana Jones and Solo, a Star Wars story. Because I'm not really interested so much into the little teasers to what's happened, because I've kind of got to the point where until they start filming, and even when they do start filming, sometimes for the sake of Solo, we don't know if it's going to happen. She kind of indicated that Indiana Jones maybe does have a future somehow. She was very proud of the film that they made. But she was less proud of Solo, a Star Wars story in a way. And she kind of pointed at the fact that she couldn't really replace Harrison Ford as Solo, and despite saying that Alden did very well in the role, that just didn't work. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I thought he put in a tremendous performance, and I loved that film. I think creatively, that and Rogue One and Andor are probably the tentpoles of her 14 years at Lucasfilm. So I was really surprised by that comment.
Totally agree. We talk about this, I don't want to speak for Mark, but we talk about Solo all the time because it's an easy film to enjoy, such an easy film to love. It was so well put together. Ron Howard did a smashing job, and the cast are uniformly brilliant. And it is nigh on impossible to replace Harrison Ford, which is why I appreciate what Alden did. He didn't do a Harrison Ford impression, and maybe it's because obviously, as you all know, I'm a Star Trek fan as well, and they've recast Kirk a couple of times, they've recast Spock a couple of times, and you get to a point, it's that little handover moment where it takes a bit of time to get used to it, but not that long before you're just watching Captain Kirk, but it's not been him chatting, it's somebody else, and we need to get to that point in Star Wars where we're watching Han Solo, but it's not Harrison Ford, because Harrison Ford's 84 this year, so he ain't doing it anymore unless you're using expensive CG that's not a real performance. It's a gimmick. It's cool. It's fun. It's great. At the end of Mando Season 2, one of the great moments of all Star Wars was seeing Luke appear on that ship. Yeah. But that's not, to me, I don't know if that's a sustainable thing. Cameo, yeah, but as a full-on thing, no. So, recasting a young Han Solo, and Alden did such a good job. I do quite fundamentally disagree with her there.
Yeah, no, I do as well for similar reasons. Because, it's examples for me. It's like you go and watch Octopussy, or you go and watch A View to a Kill, and you've got Roger Moore 57, who's in A View to Kill, who's just it's really just past it to be like a believable James Bond, And again, I think that's one of the things about Star Trek and James Bond and some of these other franchises is that because they haven't been afraid to recast, we've just had to accept it and move on with it. But because Star Wars has never kind of rebooted really or done any kind of real recasting until Solo, I think it's kind of been almost to its detriment, because I think we're kind of now limiting ourselves on story potentials rather than performance potentials, and I think that is actually a little bit short-sighted.
And that's hurting it as well.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
I think in the fourth film, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they introduced the character of Henry Jones III, or Mutt, by Shia LaBeouf. I think that was clearly set up to be the transitional character that would allow the franchise to continue on. Mm-hmm. And less so because of the character, more so because of the actor. That hasn't happened, I would suggest.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Oh, totally. But with Solo, they should have just grasped the nettle and gone for it. They should have turned around. They could have so easily, especially with Ron Howard, made a sequel to Solo that wouldn't cost $300+ million like that one did, because they made the mistake really in terms of Lord and Miller. They were clearly never the right guys, by just evidenced by the fact that they had to let them go because it wasn't working. So that was a production, that was a senior executive level error. It wasn't anything to do with the script. It wasn't nothing to do with what Lawrence Kasdan had done or any of the performances. So to do a sequel to that, I think released at the right time. So again, Bob Iger says it in his book. They messed up the release schedule for Solo as well. So I think there was legs in that era of Han Solo.
And as you point out, that that was a leadership failure, but it also, to me, was one of the most important moments in her 14 years, in that she had the power to say, no, stop, let's change this now, in the middle of a film being made, continue on, and end up releasing, which was a really high quality film, regardless of how the box office did. So I would actually say, out of everything that they've made, Solo probably has more credibility for her skills as a producer over anything else. So as much as it has probably her biggest failing, it also has her biggest success in a way.
Yeah, I like that's a good angle of looking at it.
Yeah. Paul McHugh making a comment that you liked your analogy on making tracks about Alex Ferguson. As long as George is alive, out of respect, he will be kept in the loop in who's running out Lucasfilm. I think that's true, and I think that's how it should be.
Yeah, 100%.
As well. And I think any company, and I think Disney understand this more than anyone, and that they always try to stick to what would Walt Disney do kind of feeling. And so I think as much as they get criticised, and I'm not a big fan of sugar-coated Disney things,
I've walked into a Disney park with you, Brian. I'm aware of that.
The whole thing just creeps me out. It's very creepy. So happy. That's all I can say. It's so happy and lovely that I hate it. Just.
It's a small world.
But that made them the best custodians. So even where they've probably upset George over some of the decisions and not taking on some of his content or his ideas, I still think overall he must in many ways be happy, not just in the fact that the share price has gone sky high and that most of his payment was in shares, so he's doing well financially. But I think in many respects he must be happy in certain ways that the company's transitioned, and certainly I think in terms of the way as to how important ILM's become to the whole mix at Lucasfilm as well.
Yeah. There was a point in time when I wondered whether Lucasfilm as an entity would even make it, much past sort of 2015, 2016. When you started seeing Disney on Star Wars products, rather than the Lucasfilm logo, I thought, here we go, this is the phasing out of Lucasfilm as a brand. Yeah. And that's not happened. So again, one element, massive credit to Kathleen Kennedy and everybody else for that, because that could have very easily happened. It could have just been absorbed into the broader Disney fabric, but it didn't. ILM, you make a great point. Yeah, ILM's 50 years old now, the longest running visual effects house in the world by a long way, and so many projects coming up. It's crazy. It's got its fingers in pies that surprise you when you find out about it. You don't realise that they worked on this, that, or the other. So they're going from strength to strength. Same for Skywalker Sound. So in those elements, as you mentioned, they're very well set to progress. And because Lucas, as we've said numerous times on this episode, was an innovator and wanted to push the technology, wanted to set up the company in such a way, he must look at that and think, well, one, great job, Kathleen Kennedy, for boosting and building Lucasfilm the way she has to great success and setting it up for this next era after the 50th or around the 50th, but also other elements like ILM, like Skywalker and other bits. It's in a good place to push forward.
We're at this juncture now where there's obviously going to be a transition period. We don't know how long for, but you would presume any project from this point forward has to have the green light of Dave Filoni and Lynwen Brennan. So my comment to you is, when do you expect to start getting announcements? Because we've got a blank slate in terms of TV, and if you're going to be making a film in 2028, you kind of need to be making moves to be shaping that pretty soon. You can't wait, I don't think, as far as Celebration in 2027. So is I think there's a D23 in August this year.
Yeah.
Is that the time window where we can probably expect the first real public announcements from this new team at the top?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably going to be the first real big public outing, isn't it? So you would think so.
Well, we've got May the 4th before then.
You've got May the 4th. I mean, but also, as like Brian alluded to at the top of the show, I mean, we have got that Disney shareholders. So whether or not they say anything, I mean, whether or not it's like a big announcement or if it's just like they just literally run down the laundry list of things that are kind of still in the works and stuff, just to shore up, shareholders. But yeah, so I would probably say D23 maybe. I think kind of get them both on stage. Kind of do a.
The last time they did a Disney Plus day and they did the big rundown of everything that was on the slate, didn't go so well.
No.
But Marvel like doing it that way, and even when Marvel cancel projects, they immediately replace it with something else. So they kind of get the negative balanced out with the positive. Yeah. So I think Lucasfilm need to get more at that model that don't let the media know that X project's gone without having something else up your sleeve to announce, kind of thing. It's it's going to be interesting to see how they handle things going forward.
But they're massive risk, isn't it? Because people almost like at Celebration kind of we almost expect there to be announcements and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you say sometimes you wonder if the event kind of is forcing their hand a little bit earlier than maybe they would like.
That's always a problem, I think, in that nothing should be announced until you've got a script that you're happy with, that you're going to make, rather than a 10-page treatment that you kind of like. And that seems to be the problem at the moment.
I like the thought of a mic drop. I can't think you mentioned it earlier. It might have been Paul McHugh, but I like the idea of a Filoni mic drop moment that he comes out either at the shareholders or puts an announcement out on StarWars.com on May the 4th or waits till D23. But whatever it is, and none of them are that far away in the grand scheme of things, gets his feet under the desk, starts running things, putting his fingerprints on things subtly to start, because we know there's nothing massive coming. Obviously, he's got to get out there and promote Mando and Grogu, which would be a big part of his responsibilities. But to do that. Oh, by the way, Ray film out, Christmas 2028 or whatever, bump and walked off, something like that. To Brian's point, it's got to be wrapped up. It's got to be secure. They've got to be happy with the script. No more. Oh, Stephen Knight's doing a Star Wars film, and then 6 months later, Stephen Knight's left the Star Wars film. What Star Wars? Nothing happened. So we need to get past that. But I feel that a moment like that would endear him to the fan. Not that he needs to endear to us. I mean, to the outside of our immediate circle, and just make things happen and get Star Wars in more people's faces. Not that it's ever out of the zeitgeist. It's something we say all the time. It's the one franchise that's in the pop culture all the time, but for letting people know that there's a new Star Wars film coming out, a new TV series coming out, that's always a valuable thing to do.
And the unknown equation, of course, is Bob Iger's replacement and who that's going to be, and that's going to be Bob Iger's contracted through to the end of December. So is he going to stay until the end of December, and that's going to be the transition period? We'll probably find out more next month on that. And you get into the egos of what projects is Bob Iger willing to approve? How much control does the new guy have in the transition period to say yes or no to what Bob Iger's approving and disapproving? So you get a lot of clashes, corporate clashes in the boardroom here. And I think with the way that Kathleen Kennedy has spoken, they are going to bring back up the Adam Driver movie, and that potentially opens the door to the Rey movie again. Lucasfilm clearly don't want to let it die, even though
no
Alan
mention of
Bob
Rose Quarter
Disney have said no, because Alan and Bob at Disney can both be gone within the next 6 months. So, and if they say yes to those, that suddenly becomes your 2028 movie, and everything else starts getting shuffled.
Yeah. we just need things to look forward to. We've got Mandalorian Grogu in a few months, and we've got Starfighter in May next year, and the 50th is just going to be nuts. That whole spring period next year is just going to be bonkers from top to bottom. We're all going to be so busy. But once you get past that, and then Mandalorian Grogu will already be on Disney Plus, and then Starfighter will be on Disney Plus. Then we'll have Ahsoka will be out there by then, and Maul will maybe be on season 2 by next year, hopefully. You know, other than that, we don't know for sure what's coming. So they need to come out and make some announcements.
You would imagine that the Mandalorian Grogu trailer is going to drop at the Super Bowl because that's kind of late February, and that gives you the kind of 12-week kind of window up to release kind of thing. So things will get motored next month and start taking shape, and that whole Mandalorian focus for that 12 weeks is probably not a bad thing. It lets everybody bed in a little bit and things to move behind in the background without us as fans having to worry about anything other than there's a new Star Wars film coming out.
Yeah, and gives us plenty of that, doesn't it? So
any last thoughts at all on the news this week before we say goodnight?
Mark?
Interesting times. Stay tuned to Fantha Tracks, and you'll find out more about it.
I'm just grateful. that you know, we had a quality producer like her stick around for that long, because there was times during certainly the last 10 years, I would say, where she could have very easily thought, screw this, you know, and just handed in a notice and walked, because it was getting silly at sometimes. But she didn't. And, you know, definitely too long a gap between Rise of Skywalker and Mandalorian Grogu. 7 years, that can't have been in anyone's sort of bingo card. But then again, we did have a global pandemic. You know, there are other factors that have come into that. It wasn't just, decisions made at the boardroom level. There's things far beyond that. So maybe if all things being equal, would have been, you know, that Mandalorian Grogu film would have come out in 2024, not 2026. You know what I mean? So things like that might have happened. But beyond that, you know, I just think, you know, like you said on the last Making Tracks, Mark, we've had more Star Wars films, more content, more everything, more comics, more books than, you know, in the last sort of 10, 12 years than we'd had in the previous sort of 30 plus. And it's been busy. Disney's not let Star Wars die on the vine, far from it. And here we are. We're about to kick off into the movie era again, and parks are changing up, and there's loads of games coming out, video games coming out. And we're getting excited about Star Wars again because there's some new stuff coming. Whereas, you know, not that long ago, in the big picture, we were thinking, well, you know, we've always got 2 trilogies, and Clone Wars was great, and you know, that'll keep us going. We'll always be able to do a website and talk about stuff. There'll always be merch coming out, or, you know, let's do a special episode looking back at the Ewoks films. But now, you know, which we should still do, by the way.
We haven't done it.
No. But you know, now we're always looking forward to new stuff, and it's, you know, on the roller coaster we go. So, yeah.
I mean, I think the one thing that was, I think, quite savagely omitted from that Deadline article was the fact, you know, she talks about her tenure at Lucasfilm and her 50-year career in film. Doesn't mention, like, the honorary membership to Fantha Tracks. I mean, what's that all about?
That was
keeping that on the down low.
Yeah.
We haven't announced yet, like, what she's doing post leaving President's, coming back as a full-time writer.
Yeah,
she's going to be my new co-host.
She's helping
Good Morning Tatooine. Yeah,
she's helping on the table at Star Wars Fan Fun Day as well, so I'm putting her in for that.
The 8-9 times a year that Paul Naylor goes on holiday, she's going to be my co-host. Paul McHugh asking a great question here, just right at the tail of the show. I think we all expected Filoni to get the nod at some point. Hypothetically, fast forward 15 years or so, who's next in the hot seat? Doug Chiang. Doug Chiang would be about 78 at that point.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who it's going to be right now, and write this down, Mark, because it'll happen. It's the kid who played Neil in Skeleton Crew. He's the next one.
Oh, what?
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Robert Timothy Smith. He's the one.
Is he?
And this is when it comes back to the 2 points I've made. I actually took a screenshot of the Lucasfilm leadership page this week because I'm going to watch it to see what changes over the next couple of months. Because I'm not saying Doug Chiang, but people of a certain age will be there and thinking, right, that's my chance and it's gone. So do they go to a lesser studio to get the top job somewhere else. I think some might. And you'll see this throughout all the Disney companies. There'll be a lot of movement over the next few months, I think. And it'll be the people who are disappointed or unhappy that they got overlooked, perhaps. Or you might find the likes of Doug Chang moves into a new promoted creative role.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. You start seeing a little bit of a shuffle. Paul McHugh throws out a name like Matt Martin. You never know. Neil, the next Lucasfilm president. You've got support there.
Yeah.
I don't know, and this is why I kind of think that one of the things that Dave Filoni might look to do is take on his own apprentice, perhaps someone who will work on numerous TV shows, whether that's live action or animation, and be a constant showrunner and move from show to show or things like that and build their way up through the company. That, I think, might be a model that he goes for.
Bryce Dallas Howard, I mean, she still acts, she directs, she's very, very talented. The public seem to love her. It wouldn't surprise me if she got more involved at all. So, I don't know.
Good shout.
We'll meet back here in 15 years and when it's announced, and we'll play some clips from this episode.
Brian, I'll be 69 in 15 years. I'll be in bed by now.
It's okay.
The whole thing.
I'm still young enough for a good run at the president job.
15 years' time, we'll do the whole thing via AI prompt. It'd be fine.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I like that. Can we AI prompt it so we look like this?
We're all being replaced by AI-generated, young-looking avatars.
Not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. Life will live on. Mark, here's a chance to promote Making Tracks before we end the show.
Before we end the show, I can do it for real now. So we recorded episode 247, which came out yesterday. Very quickly turned around episode. Hopefully, tomorrow or Tuesday we'll record 248. I'm sure we'll find something to talk about. We never discussed the parks, so we'll have a little chat about the parks because we ran out of time last episode. We've got some more content coming from Surrey Styles Weekend because we recorded loads of stuff there. So I shall probably put in a Mr. Naylor interview because they make me laugh. And and end of the week, I'm not sure what's coming out on Friday. It might be the next. We've got another episode of Fantha Down Under with Paul and Adam. But I think there might be a collecting track coming. I'm not 100% sure. I will find out, but there'll be something out on Friday.
I think I might be on that collecting tracks.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. We'll have to get you on Making Tracks one day.
Well, I keep dropping hints, but it's never happening.
I've never noticed.
No. This year, we've got announcements to come for Fantha Tracks at some point this year. I'll come on when we're making those announcements.
That works.
That works.
Let's do that. Yeah.
That just makes me having to finish the projects.
Exactly.
On that note, we'll say it's a good night from me.
And it's a good night from us.
Good night.
Bye.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantha Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantha Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.